It's a good day to brew, baby. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander. We're back for another episode of Millzy Brews, the show where, as per our usual arrangement, I brew a deck. Today, we're going to start something fun. I know the Dominaria United just came out, and there's plenty of commanders left that I want to build from that set, and we'll be building, of course, over the next couple weeks. But what I thought would be fun to try something different today. We just within the last week have finally seen the complete deck list for our 4 Warhammer 40K decks. And I like to do one or two of them in kind of interesting styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the precon. We have the Tyranids precon right here set before us. And what I kind of want to do is just how would I update the deck? How would I make the deck my own? What would I add to it? What would I take out? And try to find a 100-card Tyranid list that I can then, bring to Monday night and test out, but also kind of throw my hat in the ring as far as showing you guys how I would do this. Now, the first change I've made is I'm actually changing the commander. So the normal commander of the deck is the Swarm Lord here, 6 mana for a 5/5. And it's a battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone. Whenever a creature you control with the counter on it dies, you draw a card. It's not a bad commander. I just don't think it's exactly what I want to do with the deck. What I would like to do to the deck is what we have over here with Magus Lucea Kane, 1 in a teamer for a 1/1. Unfortunately, a little bit weak on the power and toughness, but that's okay. What we're really going to be using this creature for is its second ability. But let's read the first one first. Beginning a combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So every turn we're getting at least one +1/+1 counter on a creature we control. I say at least one because we're going to be playing a few enchantments that are going to allow us to put on a couple at a time. So we're gonna be able to play into that, right? Because we know once per turn we could put those counters on. But the real important thing is going to be the second part. It says Psychic Stimulus, tap, add 2 colorless mana. When you next cast a spell with an X in its mana cost or activate an ability with X in its activation cost this turn, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets of the copy. So the cool part here is if we cast a spell with X in its casting cost, which a lot of the creatures in this deck have, we're going to get a copy of them. And the cool part about copying X spells is that when you copy an X spell on the stack, you get the same value of X, which is pretty cool. So what I'd like to do is try to create a strategy where we're going to be doubling up our creatures. We're going to put in some enchantments and some support for some good combat. We're in teamer colors. We have access to extra turns. We have access to extra combat. We have access to lots of draw and green for playing creatures. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to play into the +1/+1 counters. So we're going to add a couple more enchantments and spells like that. But what I really would like to do is win via combat, and also put in a few more, cheeky things into the deck. So I think it makes more sense to start by adding cards than it does taking cards out. And the reason that is because I'm actually not 100% sure if I want to play every single creature that's in this deck. With my tribal decks, I like to have between 20, 26, 27, and 30 or 31 creatures. So I think a lot of these are going to come out anyway. 39 lands, in my opinion, is too many. We're going to be playing a lot of ramps, so we don't really need those, and we're also going to completely change up our mana base. There's very few cards in this mana base that I really agree with. I think we're going to be changing a lot of it out. We have some of the good pieces of ramp that we want, but what basically we're going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through completely changing the deck to how I'd want to play it. If you guys disagree with any of the cards, of course, let me know in the comments. But at the end of the day, remember that I'm doing this half for me and half for you. Half for me to enjoy this Tyranid list and play it at my table with the guys on Monday nights, as well as other times when I play this list. And also, I want to determine if this is a deck I want to buy. The precons are a little expensive at the moment, and I want to make sure that I want to spend my money. So what I'm going to do for now is we're going to start adding some cards I think are going to be really good in this list. What I'm doing here is I want to add some value enchantments and artifacts that are going to go through and do a good job for us. So the first is Rhythm of the Wild. Non-token creatures you control have Riot, which means they come in with either our choice of haste or a +1/+1 counter. And creature spells you control can't be countered. So this is going to stop our creatures being countered. Now, if Magus Lucea Kane copies the creature spell that we cast, unfortunately, because that comes in as a token, Rhythm of the Wild won't activate on the token. But I still think that's completely okay. I don't think we mind that at all. Another card I like for this, since hopefully all of our creatures are going to be Tyranids, is a card called Shared Animosity. It says whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each attacking creature that shares a creature type with this. Hopefully we can build some wide attacks. And now we need things that are going to pay us off for casting creatures. A lot of our deck is going to be casting creatures. So first up is Garruk's Uprising. When it comes in, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. All of our creatures have trample. And then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under control, we draw a card. So the good part here is we're drawing cards for something we already want to do anyway. And we're also going to throw in Elemental Bond. Does the same thing, but for power 3 or greater. This is great because neither of them say non-token. So if we copy them with our commander, we're going to get 2 copies of them. So I think that's really great. And then we're going to go ahead and add the Great Henge as well. Similar thing. It's a mana rock, which is great. But same thing. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, doesn't matter. It's power. We get a +1/+1 counter out and draw a card. So that's great because it's also going to add counters to creatures that may not have them already. I think the big decision point here is going to be deciding whether we're going to keep this truly tribal. And that's what I'd like to do, especially in all reality, mainly just to keep the integrity of the 40K theme. But I'm just going to add a Sakashima in because I think it's a good overall creature here and it's going to help us out a little bit. Okay, let's look into more enchantments. The first thought I had was Invigorating Hot Spring. It says, Invigorating Hot Spring enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Modified creatures you control have haste. So equipment, auras, or counters are modifications, and since almost every creature in our deck wants to come in with a counter on it, I think Invigorating Hot Spring is just going to end up giving all of our creatures haste. And I actually think this is almost better than like a Fervor in this deck, because we're actually going to be able to get the counters out of it. I also really like a card like Simic Ascendancy. This is a win con for us. For 3 mana, we can put a counter on target creature. Whenever one of our counters are put on a creature, we put that many counters on growth on Simic Ascendancy. I almost said Simic growth, Simic Ascendancy. And then when there's 20 or more counters on it on our upkeep, we win the game. So this is another route to go as far as winning the game. And it's not going to be very hard, especially when we're playing some of these X creatures that we can dump a bunch of mana into. And we can get them doubling up on counters. Next, I like a card like Branching Evolution. This is like a mini doubling season. If one or more counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many counters are put on instead. That's going to do us really great. We already have Hardened Scales in the deck, which is really great. That just adds 1. But Branching Evolution is going to double. So if we put, I don't know, 5 mana into this, into X on this Aberrant, for example, Branching Evolution would go ahead and double it. So it would be for 7, we would be getting a 10/10. So very good there. Next card that I cut my teeth on in Zaxara, and it's a really great enchantment, is Unbound Flourishing. For 2 and a green, we get an enchantment that says whenever you cast a permanent spell with a mana cost containing X, double the value of X. So this is great because we can stack our triggers from my understanding, and if you know this to be otherwise the case, please feel free to throw it down in the comments. But if we cast an X spell with Unbound Flourishing and Magus Lucea both out in the battlefield, we can double the copy of X as a triggered ability, and then this trigger will go on the stack, copying the doubled value of X in that X spell. So that should work out really well. And then the bottom says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell or activate an ability, if that spell's mana cost or ability's activation cost contains X, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So kind of talking about, we're kind of going up the similar vein to Magus Lucea here, where we're going to be copying spells and abilities. So what we'll need to do is look at some spells that have X in it that we can kind of take advantage of here. And we're not going to turn into a complete X spell deck. You know, this isn't Zaxxara where we're trying to pay off all of the X spells. You know, we're not, I doubt we're running the Elementalist palette or anything like that. I really want to focus more on this teamer game plan where we're going for combat. I think a fitting card next would be something like Teamer Ascendancy. This gives all of our creatures haste, and then whenever another creature comes down with power 4 or greater, we're going to draw a card. So you could see my plan here is to get these cards that are going to allow us to keep drawing cards, so that way we can keep refilling our hand and get our best creatures down. I think in a deck like this, we're going to play a lot of ramp, but I'd like to use cards like Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl just to give us some better ramp quickly. You know, a lot of our ramp is on turn 2. Why not put in a couple pieces of ramp on turn 1? All right. So my plan here is I'm just going to go kind of card type by card type. Add in some cards I can think of off the top of my head. I've got a +1/+1 counter theme tab of EDH pulled up for both Teamer and Simic. We're gonna go through it, see if we can find some new cards, and then we'll make some cuts and bang bang, we'll have a deck. So let's go into the sorceries. I think we need to add a couple of our cards that are not here. We have Nature's Lore. Can go get us those lands that have forest typing. Same thing with 3 visits. So these both will allow us to go get lands like Ketchutrium that we're going to add, or any of our dual lands that way. And then I'm going to add a card called Into the North. This is a new card I've been adding some of my green decks and playing either snow basics or the snow dual lands. I think in this case I'm going to play the snow dual lands because this doesn't prevent you from getting this doesn't say basic land, this just says snow land. So I'd like to use this to be able to go get let's see, we have 2 snow lands probably we want to play here, the green blue one and the green red one, right? Give us I imagine a lot of our counter themes are going to be centered in green, right? Anyway, so this deck's probably going to center in green. So Into the North will allow us to go get either of those just as the other ones would. So I really like that. Going into the instance, I really like something like Cyclonic Rift for this deck, just to give us a little bit of protection, bounce some things back to the hand. We want to add something fun like Heroic Intervention to protect our board. We're going to have a lot of creatures, and we want to make sure that we can use them. I kind of like a card like Silk Guard. Silk Guard came out in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty in the Chishiro deck. So this may be something, this modified keyword may be something we want to look into. This might be something that's going to help us a lot for our deck, since so many things care about +1/+1 counters. But it says put a +1/+1 counter on each up to X target creatures you control. So if we put 0 into this for 1 green mana, all it will do is Oro's equipment and modified creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Well, most of our creatures are going to have counters on them, or we're going to try to put counters on them. So I think this Silk Guard should work out well in giving all of our creatures hexproof. Now, the only shame is that Silk Guard doesn't give them indestructible. We're going to try our best to get around that as much as possible. But I like that. Oh, sorry, it switched up here. I like that. I think it could be an interesting little pick there, and I'm willing to at least give it a shot. A card that I just thought of that I'd like to see if we can make work is an enchantment I've had a lot of luck in my Miram deck with dragons. Is this? It's called Reflections of Lit Jar. For 5 mana, we choose a creature type. Here, hopefully, we're going to choose Tyranids since we have so many of them. It says when you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. So it's going to get a little bad when we start dealing with. What we really need to do is determine how many legendary Tyranids we're going to play, and if we're going to play a lot of them, then maybe we, look into a mirror box or something like that. I doubt it. I think there's not going to be that many, but it's something we want to pay attention to. In my Miram deck, I play things like Molten Echoes. But the trouble here with Molten Echoes is going to be that it doesn't do this on cast. It does it on enters the battlefield. And remember that when you make copies of creatures, if the creature's a 0/0, you actually aren't going to get a copy of it because it's going to come in dead. So what we're going to do here with Molten Echoes is try to determine a little bit later whether most of our Tyranids come in with counters on them, if there's 0/0s that come in counters, and if there's a lot less of them that do, if there's more of them that have natural power and toughnesses, I think this is going to become pretty important, and I think it's really going to help our strategy. We got the Hardened Scales, we got the Branching Evolution, we got the Unbound Flourishing. I think the next obvious choice is Doubling Season. I know a couple of the Tyranids care about making tokens, so I think Doubling Season seems like a slam dunk. It's a little bit high up on the mana curve at 5, but I think it does absolutely everything we want it to. We have Cultivate. Let's add Kadama's Reach as well. I don't mind cutting one of the two if we find we have enough ramp, but I think with Kane being 4 and all the rest of our creatures wanting to be for as much as possible, I think we want as much ramp as we can get. We want to be ramping up really quickly, and we want to be getting to those higher mana echelons as quick as we can. You know, we see this deck has a reprint of Farseek, it has a reprint of Cultivate, has a reprint of Rampant Growth. So it's got a lot of really great ramp in it. I just think what we want to do is try to increase our ramp. So with playing things like Rampant Growth and Cultivate and Kadama's Reach, it means that we'll still be playing a ton of basic lands as well. So we can try to look into those synergies as well. All right, we're already up to 123, so we're making lots of great adds. I can already tell you that a bunch of these spells are going to come out, and that's okay. I want to try my best to play as many of the new cards as I can, because I'd like to keep this as themed as possible. But at the same time, I also want to make it a good deck. So let's go ahead and jump over to our EDH rec pages. I think I've got what I want for the moment that I can think of off the top of my head. I know that I'm going to start getting some great ideas once we shoot on over here to EDH rec, and that's what I'm counting on. So let's go on here. I went to themes. I picked the +1/+1 counter thing, and you can sort by color combination. So I sort by Simic, green, blue, and then we have a teamer page pulled up for blue, green, red, which is also our other combinations. So what I want to do here is I'm kind of interested in seeing what cards people are playing in this subtype, see if I'm missing anything, see if I'm thinking, missing any other ways to really make this deck better. So I kind of like the idea of Master Chef. It says commander creatures you own have this creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and other creatures you control enter the battlefield with additional +1/+1 counter on it. This one's definitely interesting for sure. I feel like it fits our game plan, so we're going to set that aside for now. We move into our high synergy cards. So we see Inspiring Call got a print, which allows us to draw. I really like something like Kadama of the West Tree and Herald of the Secret Streams. So I think what we're going to have to decide here is are we okay with playing a couple off... Are we okay with playing a couple off-typed creatures to get the effects? And Herald of the Secret Streams, I think I'm the most interested in. So this creature's controlled +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. I mean, that's a win con right there. Kadama's just a way to ramp, which I actually don't mind either. But I think this is more important to our strategy than Kadama is. Although I really like Kadama as well. So I really need to determine here how much I want to take away from the Tyranids, and I'm still not sure. So I'm going to try to keep my additions of creatures as low as possible, so we can try to keep that that tribal theme really there. I think something like the Ozolith makes a ton of sense, allowing us to keep the counters that we'd lose from our creatures that die, and then at the start of our combat, we can get them in. And if we're going to play the Ozolith and we're going to play Sol Ring and potentially others, I'm going to go ahead and add Urza's Saga in as a land. It can go search the Ozolith, it can go search the Sol Ring. If we want to play a Crypt or something like that, it can search that as well. So I really like Urza's Saga. It can get us a good jump ahead when we need it. We're going to keep going here. I love something like Mana Gorge or Hydra, but again, like I said, I know I'm a broken record, but I want to try my best to keep it as Tyranid centric as possible. And so I'm going to be giving up a lot of probably good creatures in this sense, but there are some creatures I think that are really important. And Vorinclex to me is kind of one of them. It's going to double up our counters, but it's also just going to be a big creature. So I think it deserves a slot in the deck for coming in and helping out our strategy. I also really like a card like Hydroid Krasis. But let's get down into the instants and sorceries. I was thinking about Growth Spiral as a way to just draw a card and do some ramp. I think it's worth adding in here. We really want to be ramping up, and if we have an extra 2 mana, I think Growth Spiral can be a really good card for that. Seeing the Rapid Hybrid, I think this is time to talk about removal. What do we want to run for removal? We see the Aetherize here. We see Starstorm, which does some damage, but I don't really see any good removal. So I think I want to add something like a Beast Within. This is going to hit absolutely everything we would need to destroy. It would hit any permanent. So not only just creatures, but it's also going to hit everything else. And then we saw the +1/+1 counter decks looking at rapid hybridization, and there's another spell just like it called Pongify. I kind of like both of these because they're going to give us really cheap removal that hopefully we can have access to and keep around. So I really like that. We may find better spells when we move into looking at our teamer page, but I think for now it seems like a really good choice. We see Krosan Grip. I'm okay. I think I prefer Beast Within. I prefer the more general choice. We also have Psych Rift, which can be a single target bounce or a whole board bounce, depending on what you need. Like the idea of Quandrix Command, I just don't know if it does enough. Yes, it can return things. Yes, it can put things back to our hand or put counters. So maybe that does mean that it's good enough. We can bounce something back to our opponent's hand and we can put counters on our creature. We can negate a artifact or enchantment spell, or we can shuffle cards from our graveyard back into our library. Seems like it could be pretty good. Seems like it might be worth the slot, but again, something that we'll look at as we get. I think an argument could be made for Bioshift, but I don't really think I want to play into that. I do like the idea of Slip Out the Back. It's a piece of protection. But I kind of like the Silk Guard protection. The only good thing about Slip Out the Back is it actually phases the creature out, which is going to protect it. Did our deck come with a Brainstorm? It didn't, so I don't mind putting in a Brainstorm. It's a great piece of draw in green. Allows us to draw the top 3 and then put 2 of any of our choice back down, which I really, really like. Love the idea of Double Major. Double Major is a spell that copies a creature. And if that creature spell is legendary, the copy is not. So I think I really like Double Major, especially since there's a couple pretty big, legendary creatures in the deck. Even our commander that we wouldn't mind copying. We'll go ahead and throw Master Chef in there. Again, it's of course something we can always remove later. Description of Abundance allows us to put counters on or fight. So Joint Exploration just came out in Dominaria United. I've been kind of back and forth on this card. So for 2 mana, you scry 2 and then draw a card. Or if you kick it, you also get to put a land from your hand out of the battlefield. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. Like, I see the benefit of it and I see the downside of it. I'm just honestly not entirely sure how I feel. So I'm not sure what to do. So I kind of like Ride the Avalanche here. It's a 2 mana spell, green blue. It says the next spell you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash, so we could flash in a creature. When you cast your next spell this turn, put X +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature, where X is the mana value of that spell. We can also use this to flash in sorcery spells as well. I kind of like the idea of it. If we're gonna play an enchantment or something like that, or we're going to already play another spell anyway. It could just give us some free counters. So I'm interested there. I love the idea of Into the Royal. I just don't know. We also have something like Planar Incision to blink. We have Worldly Tutor, which I really like. I feel like there's going to be some important creatures in our deck, and we're going to want to be able to go get them. So Worldly Tutor makes a ton of sense. All right, let's get down into the sorceries. We've got Tezzeret's Gambit, which makes a ton of sense. Proliferate says you choose any number of permanents or players and give them all another counter of each kind they already have. This would give all of our creatures another +1/+1 counter. So for 3, and most of the time people would play that Phyrexian mana with 2 life, we would get to proliferate our entire board and draw 2 cards. Tezzeret's Gambit seems like it would be interesting, so let's go ahead and throw it in. I think this could be definitely interesting for sure. I don't mind Oversimplify. It's a board wipe. Exile all creatures, and then everybody gets a creature token. Seems kind of interesting. The good part here is that it exiles all creatures, so opponents can't protect their creatures or anything like that. It's just going to wipe the entire board. That could be interesting. I love Body of Research. I've been trying to put Body of Research back into a deck for a really long time. It's going to make just a massive creature. But 6 mana seems like a lot that we could use elsewhere. I kind of like the idea of Curse of the Swine, since our commander can double the copy of X. Maybe Curse of the Swine could be a really good board wipe. The only bad part to remember about Curse of the Swine, of course, is that it's not up to X target creatures, it's X target creatures. So we would still have to have enough targets. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of my mind. Like the idea of Overwhelming Stampede, that seems kind of interesting. Neoform could be kind of cool if we're looking to kind of play that pod aspect. Really like Triumph. At the end of the day, we need to end the game. We are a creature deck, and we need to end the game with combat, probably more than anything else. So the Triumph of the Hordes is going to do that. I kind of like the idea of like Finale of Devastation or something like that up on the top end to end the game, because I expect we're going to get a ton of mana. It's just going to come down to how we end the game. So for me, that's a kind of finisher that I would put down. We do have some creatures up on the top end that don't come in, that aren't X spells, like Hierophant, Biotown, or what's the name of it? The old One Eye that don't come in with counters on them, so they'd be like a perfect target for a Finale Devastation, because they're always going to come in with a certain power and toughness. I like the idea of Twinning Staff, because our commander copies the creature spell, right? Whenever you cast your next spell with an X in its mana cost, copy that spell or ability. So Twinning Staff says whenever you would copy a spell one or more times, instead of copy that many times +1, you choose new targets for the copy. So I think Twinning Staff makes a ton of sense. What I kind of like about Magus is she acts a lot like Volo in some senses, and kind of how the deck's built. So I kind of think that's kind of interesting. We see Hadana's Climb, which seems perfect for this deck, because when it flips over, you can give a creature flying until end of turn, so it can get our creatures in there for a little bit more damage. We see the Branching Evolution. We see the Breed for the Hunt, which comes in the deck, which is kind of a it's kind of a Toski type effect, but just for creatures with +1/+1 counters on them. So that's kind of interesting. And Explorable Tide seems kind of interesting. Got Doubling Season. We see Hydra's Growth, which is definitely interesting for sure. We see Fight Rigging. Love the idea of Fight Rigging in this deck, since we're already playing around with +1/+1 counters. Can't believe I forgot everyone's favorite blue enchantment, Rhystic Study, helping us draw some cards. We probably got too many draw enchantments at the moment, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and cut that down. We can definitely bring that number down. Love the idea of Freed from the Real or Pemin's Aura to untap our commander and be able to add some more mana. I think I'm okay with that. And the reason is because our, like we learned with Zaxara in the Sultai Hydra's list, because you always have access to your commander, something like Freed from the Real can be a really cool thing with that combination. So we see Death's Presence. Did it get in? Did it get it did. It got reprinted in this deck. Okay. That's interesting. We got Garrick's Uprising, we got Roiling Earth right there. Okay. I like the idea of Sylvan Library. Some people don't like playing it, but I do. I just think it helps you with, especially in the early game, if you need to be a little bit greedy to get yourself further ahead. Are there any Planeswalkers that we want to play? I kind of like the idea of Nissa, Voices, and Zendikar. Giving everything a counter. Seems like it would be pretty good. So I think she's worth considering. And then we'll look for some +1/+1 counter lands, but we'll get into the rest of these lands in a little bit. I like Boseiju and Odawara. We need to make sure we remember to add those in. All right. Pardon me. Okay, Mana Rocks. I'm sure we're playing Arcane Signet. I'm sure we're playing Soul Ring. Playing Herald's Horn. Okay. So are there any other Mana Rocks you want to add? Pardon me. An argument could be made for Replicating Ring, since we're going to have a bunch of ways to double, or at least 1 or 2 ways to double counters. I don't mind a Talisman or a Simic Signet because they're just going to give us some more mana. So let's add the Simic Signet at least for now. I'm just realizing that we're not completely in blue-green, so something like Replicating Ring might make more sense. We also have an option of something like Chromatic Lantern, which will just help us fix our mana, which I actually don't mind the look of either, and that actually just got a nice pretty reprint in the 40k decks. We said, what, Odawara and Boseiju, 2 of our channel lands. They're going to give us access to good abilities, especially Boseiju. Boseiju is one of my favorite cards from over the lands from over the last year. We'll worry about the dual lands later because we need to look at our entire creature base as well. So that goes to Simic. All right, let's move on to Tamer. So we're going to get access to red cards now. Let's go through and see if there's anything we missed. We see Tamer Ascendancy. We see Rhythm of the Wild. Okay, all pretty samey there. I don't expect there to be much we missed. I'm looking for more of the spells. I like the idea of Chaos Warp. Could be an interesting removal piece. Trap Essence, I don't really think we need to play any counter spells. I think we're going to be pretty much focused on just trying to get our creatures out there and get it going. I love the idea of Fling. That could be interesting. As a little piece of kind of ending the game. Blasphemous Act could be interesting for a board wipe. We don't really have one. And if all our creatures are big enough, Blasphemous Act wouldn't affect us, but I think it could be interesting as a board wipe potential. I can't think of many red cards, to be honest, that I really am like dying to put in, mostly because I think a lot of our support for this +1/+1 counters theme is in green blue. So I don't think we need as much of the love from the red. Like I don't mind something like Anarchabolus, Domri Anarchabolus. Don't mind something like that. I don't even mind like Vivian or Nissa. It's okay. So the palette is what has me intrigued here. So whenever you cast a spell with an X in its mana cost, put 2 charge counters on it. You can add a mana of any color, or you can add it colorless, where colorless is the number of counters on it. I think I kind of like it in this deck. If we're going to be trying to play around with the +1/+1 counters, I feel like we can make the palette really work. And if we get down to it and we end up playing more creatures that don't have counters, of course, we can always take it out. We saw like Nykthos up there, which I really like the idea of getting us mana for the amount of pips on permanents we have. And since we're playing a lot more permanents now, especially like enchantments, Nykthos could be really good. So let's go ahead and add that in. Okay. Well, I think we've hit the point where we're going to go through the mana base. I think I've hit my point where I think I'm happy with what we've added for now. So what I want to do is start with the mana base and see where we want it to go. I want to cut a lot of these filler lands. We're going to drop the amount of basic lands down. We're still going to have enough where we can still search with all of our ramp cards. But let's start by adding our fetch lands. We're going to do Wooded Foothills, Misty Rainforest, and Scalding Tarn. These are going to allow us to go get our dual or tri lands. So we're going to add Ketria Triome. That's our tri land that has 3 types. So the cool part about Ketria Triome is we can actually go get it off of all of those ramp spells that say go get a forest or like Farseek, or we can get it off any of our fetch lands. We're going to play our 3 shock lands we have access to here. We're going to play the Stomping Ground. We're going to play the Breeding Pool. And we're going to play our Steam Vents. I think we're going to end up centering in green more than anything else. So when it comes to our land base, we're going to want to kind of be careful of what we end up choosing. I see a lot more green than anything else. But that's okay. We can definitely go from here. So what I think we want to do now for the lands is go through and cut what we don't want. I'm good on Ash Barrens. I like Boseiju. I like the Breeding Pool. Cave of Temptation. Adamant Color. Yeah, I'm good on Cave of Temptation. Cinderglade, I actually don't mind. It's searchable. And we're going to hopefully play enough basic lands. We're going to cut Evolving Wilds. There's a really good argument for Exotic Orchard because we're probably going to end up playing against a lot of people who play blue or green anyway. I really don't like Frontier Bivouac very much. I just never have. I'd rather play some other dual lands over it. I'm going to cut the Game Trail. Got the Misty Rainforest. We got our Opal Palace. Opal Palace. I'm gonna say no for now. I think I got better lands. Path of Ancestry. Yes, we're gonna stick with the types. So we want that. We're gonna cut the Rugged Highlands. We got better dual lands we could play. We're gonna cut all the temples. Even though I really love the new art, we have better lands we could play, and I want to make sure that our land base is golden here. We're going to keep Unclaimed Territory, though, because since we're going to be playing a lot of these Tyranid cards, we really want it. And that brings up to 38. I could probably cut the number of basic lands down. I think we'll go down to like 4 here. We'll go down to 2 here. Let's go down to 2 here. It's going to give us some room for some dual lands. So I think the first cycle of dual lands I really want is Rootbound Crag and Hinterland Harbor specifically. So just 2 of the 3 filter lands. Since we're centered in green, I really want those 2 specifically. We also need those 2 snowlands, right? I said I was going to play into the north. And we need those 2 lands. I don't think I remember the name of them, so we're going to go find out really quick. Let's see. It's not what I wanted. Pardon me. So we're looking for Highland Forest, and we're looking for Rimewood Falls. And the reason we're looking for these 2 is because, A, they could be searched out with... They could be searched out with our Into the North, as well as they could be searched out with any of our fetch lands. So I really like those 2. I think they're going to help. Next up, I really want to play what I call the commander lands, the one that come in if you have 2 or more opponents. So we've got Spire Garden, we've got Rejuvenating Springs, and we have Training Center. Here, I don't mind playing the red-blue one because we do have some double blue spells, so we do still need access here. And then the last one that I can think of is the Innistrad cycle. We got Rockfall Vale, we got Dreamroot, Cascade. So we're at 33, and then Stormcarved Coast would make it 34. I think I like that for now. We got enough basic lands for our spells. I think maybe we cut Cinderglade there. right, so we got plenty of basics for all of our ramp spells. We've got lots of a mix. We've got some great cards we could search. You could even argue Odawara maybe comes out because we don't really need the blue as much. We're not playing a ton of basic. What I'm thinking of is maybe we cut... What do we cut Odawara for? What 3-color lands are we missing? We've got Command Tower. Oh, let's cut Odawara for Plaza of Heroes. Plaza of Heroes might end up coming in a little better for us here. The 3 colors. So let's do that. All right, we got 33 lands. I think I'm happy with the cards we have right now as far as that we've added. So let's go through and make some cuts. We're at 144. So we desperately need to make some cuts. I kind of want to do the creatures last. I know that a lot of them will end up, some of them will end up coming out. Let's go through our sorceries. Blasphemous Act makes a ton of sense. We need a board wipe. Cultivate I like. Curse of the Swine I like. Explore is good. Don't really like Hull Breach. Nope, that's not what I meant to put there. I want to put Hull Breach there. There we go. Wait, it takes it out of our main board. Troth Kadama's Reach, Rampant Growth. Tezzeret's Gambit. Maybe we cut Tezzeret's Gambit for now. And I think I want to cut Tyrannid's Invasion. Although I kind of like the look of it. I think we really want this big bulk of ramp. I think maybe even Explore can come out for the rest of it that we've added. Okay, so I like that for now. I like Nissa for now. So let's go find our instance. Let's go through these. Aetherize I really don't love. And the reason is because I think Cyclonic Rift does everything we want it to do it better. I like Beast Within. I like Brainstorm. Dumb Major Growth Spiral. Harrow. We probably can cut Harrow because we're not playing as many basic lands. We already have so many things that can go get basic lands. We got Heroic Intervention. Inspiring Call. Pongify, Quantum's Command, Rapid Hybrid, Ride the Avalanche, Silk Guard. I'm going to take Starstorm out. We don't really need that from what I'm thinking. And I think maybe Ride the Avalanche comes out. I think it's a card that I put in when we cut our sideboard down to those list of 9 or 10 cards that we're going to look at while we're testing. I think it's definitely one of those. And I think Inspiring Call is one of those as well. I think depending on how many things we're playing, we're not going to have many issues drawing cards. Even though I love the look of this art. So maybe we'll keep it in there for now. Maybe it's the Growth Spiral we cut for now. I think we have enough ramp, but if we decide we don't have enough, I like the Pongify and the Rapid Hybrid for the removal. So I like that, and I like our land count. All right, so let's go to our enchantments. I feel like we're going to have to cut back here. So we're going to have to really go through these. Wild Growth I really like because it adds that extra green mana. I like Unbound Flourishing. Let's read the first Tyrannic War. It's been a little bit since I've seen this card. So we get a Saga for 5 mana. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. If its mana cost contains X, it enters with the battlefield number of plus and plus encounters on it equal to the number of lands you control. That's really good. That's pretty good. And then double the number of each kind of counter on target creature you control. So I don't mind that. I think it helps our strategy. I like Temur Ascendancy. Love that. Love the Ascendancy. Love that. Shadow of the Warp says the first creature spell you cost each turn costs 2 less to cast. And whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, it deals 2 damage to them. That's a reduction. I think that's pretty good. Rhythm of the Wild I like. The Study I like. I think we cut the Overgrowth. Cut New Horizons. So as you notice, those are basically the more expensive versions of Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl. So I think they're pretty easy to cut. I kind of going to cut the Master Chef for now. I just don't see it sitting in here above other things. Hardened Scales, Hadama's Climb, Garrick's Uprising, Freed from the Real, The Bond, Doubling Season. I'm going to cut Death's Presence. I just don't like it as much as I think the creators of this deck did. Bread for the Hunt, Evolution. I don't think we need Abundance either as much as I love the art on that card. Down to 130. Yeah, I have a feeling some of these enchantments are going to have to go. I'm just not sure yet. So we'll come back. I think we can definitely come back there. Let's go over to our artifacts. I like Twinning Staff. I love the Ozolith. I like the Great Henge. I like Soaring. Icon of Ancestry is the one that buffs up creature cards. I'm not as worried about it. Herald's Horn I do like because it's going to help cut down X. I don't really like Goliath Truck. I'm not really a fan of the vehicle aspect of that. I'm going to cut the palette for now. As much as I like it, I think it's one of those cards that gets put in the sideboard and we see if it comes back in. I like the Chromatic Lantern because, again, we're 3 colors. Bone Sabers, I'm kind of back and forth on. I like it because it's going to put counters on a creature, but I don't like it because it just seems expensive. So I think, again, it's one of those cards that probably comes out and gets put in a... It probably comes out and again, it's probably in that little bit of stuff. I think I'm going to cut this Silk Guard for now. Again, I think I like the card, but I think Heroic Intervention is just strictly better. We're at 125. We got to cut 25 cards, and not all of them are going to come from the creatures. So I think that's a good number. I think that's a good number. I think the instants are a good number. So it looks like it's the enchantments that needs to get cut by a few more. I think I'll cut the Freed from the Real. Maybe that's something we can keep in the sideboard. Are you playing too many rewards for playing creatures? Maybe we need to cut... I like Bread for the Hunt, but I'm thinking what's easier to draw off of, creatures coming in or attacking? And I think creatures coming in is going to be easier to draw off of, so I think I'm going to cut Bread for the Hunt there. I guess you could argue Hadana's Climb as much as I like it. I could argue for it, but I think it does really good. Maybe we cut like a Molten Echo style. I think I'm going to cut the Wild Growth. Actually, I think I prefer the Utopia. I'm not sure. I like both of them, but maybe we'll cut them for now. We do have a fair amount of ramp, and we do have other creatures that tap for mana, so maybe we don't really need them. We're down to 120. I can see us cutting about 10 creatures, so we still need to cut a few cards. This is really hard. We will cut the Elemental Bond for now. I really like it. It's such a good piece of draw. I really like Temur Ascendancy, Garruk's Uprising, and Elemental Bond because we want to get that effect quickly. We want to make sure we always have it. Maybe it's Shared Animosity. Maybe we're not going to do that much, as much attacking as we expect to. I like Shadow in the Warp a lot. I like Reflections. I like Molten Echoes. So one gets, I think it's the Litjara because it doesn't get haste. It did stay on the battlefield, so we're down to 119. I know that my problem right now is right here. I know that this is going to come down by 10 or 11, maybe 12, but I still feel like we have some extras somewhere, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. I really don't want to cut Nissa, but maybe Nissa is part of the problem. Maybe we don't. Maybe we're going to have so many things to put counters on anyway that it's not going to be a problem. Do I cut a board wipe? Well, I don't really want to. It seems like both our board wipes are pretty good. Maybe it's something like Quandrix Command. Pardon me. We're down to 117. Well, let's go through the creatures. I think that's going to be our next big hinge point, and then we'll come back to this. I still feel like probably one more enchantment comes out. So let's go through it, and then we'll come back. Come back to it. So let's start from the bottom, just because I think it's going to end up being a little bit easier. To see Zoanthrope Ravenous. Ravenous is the new mechanic. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If it's 5 or more, we draw a card. Okay. So when we copy it on the stack, the same thing will happen. So we would get a copy off the draw as well. Flying Ward 2, when enters the battlefield, does X damage to any target. I really like that. That's really good. Winged Hive Tyrant, other creatures you control with counters on them have flying and haste. That's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. And it's not legendary. So that's great. That's perfect. We got Vorinclex, which I really would like. Although maybe the argument is we try to keep it a little bit more, maybe we could try to keep it a little more tribal. I'm not sure. Venom Thrope, Flying Death Touch, Hexproof. Okay. Don't love it as much. It is 3 mana, which is great for a little Death Toucher. So it could be good for sure. I think right now it's the first one that I want to cut. So let's go from there. Tyrant Guard, X2 green, Ravenous, sack it. Creatures you control with counters on them gain Hexproof, indestructible. Perfect. Here we go. It's not legendary. We can get multiple copies of it. That's perfect. Tyrannid Prime, evolve. Other creatures you control have evolved. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if that creature's power or toughness is higher than this creature, it gets a counter on it. That's great. That's going to help us out a ton, especially when our big creatures come in, our really massive creatures. It's going to give all the rest of our creatures a counter. So that's perfect, and we can get more than one copy of that. Tyrannid Herod, flying, ward 4 for 6 mana, so that's not too bad for a 4/4. Whenever another Tyrannid enters, deals combat damage to a player, create a blue Tyrannid Gargoyle creature token. I like that. Okay. Trigon Prime. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter hit and up to one other attacking creature. That creature can't be blocked this turn. Okay, I don't mind that. It's not my favorite, but I'm interested at least. Toxicrene. This one seems interesting. Reach, Death Touch. All lands have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and lose all of their abilities. So this is a way to hose our opponent's lands. Like if we're playing against Field of the Dead or Cabal Coffers or something like that. Very interested about that. The Swarm Lord. I just don't like it, but I think it needs to be in here. It just seems overcosted. And I just think there's better creatures, but I feel like it would be literally heresy of me to take it out of this deck, considering it's supposed to be, you know, that iconic leader of the Tyrannids. Whenever a red source neutral deals damage to 1 or more permanents, put a +1/+1 counter on the red terror. How red is our deck at the end of the day? I guess there's enough red creatures. Okay, so maybe we keep it in here for now. Turvagon. Ravenous Trample, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 tokens. That's great, because we can double this up and it has Trample on its own. Termagant Storm, Ravenous, whenever it dies, create that number of 1/1 tokens equal to its power. I like that. Gives us an ability in case it dies. Ravenous Defender, enters the battlefield, search your library for up to X basic land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped. Ooh, I like it, but we're purposely not playing. We're not playing that many basic lands, so I like it because early game you could come in and get some ramp. Late game, that's a head scratcher. I gotta think about that, because if we could play into that a little bit more, if there's more of those effects, maybe we cut a few dual lands. So we'll come back to that. Screamer Killer. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana of 5 or greater, it deals 5 damage to any target. That's not bad. It's kind of like a little Warstorm Surge effect, which is something I had considered. Sakashima, I like it. It can either copy our commander or copy anything else. Ravenous Flash. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target creature your opponent controls tax this turn if able. It's just a classic, 2 mana X. So I think it could be good. We could flash it in. Pure Strain Gene Stealer enters the battlefield with 2 counters on it. Whenever it attacks, you may remove a counter from it if you do search library for basic land. I think I'm going to cut this one. This one doesn't seem as good. Old One Eye, I love. I've looked at this for a couple other decks. Comes in, every other creature has trample, and we get some good things. Nexus, basic lands you control have add 2 colorless mana. Use this only to cast spells that contain X. So this is perfect. This is exactly what we want, is a little mana dork that's going to help us with these giant spells. Mawloc, when it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature opponent controls. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Love it. That's going to be a little piece of removal. Melanthrope, when it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard. Put a counter on it for each creature card exiled this way. I like it. I like that it's a little bit of a piece of graveyard hate. I just don't know that I love it. So I think I'm going to cut it for now. Lictor, when it enters the battlefield, and your opponent's control this turn. If a creature on the battlefield... Yeah, I don't really like that one as much. Kadam of the West Tree, I think I can cut. It's pretty obvious we have enough trample sources already, so we don't really need it. And I actually think I'm going to cut Boring Collects. As much as I like the card, I'd like to try to keep this tribal. We're down at 111. I like Sakashima just because it can copy our commander. And I think we always want 2 copies of our commander. Ravenous. Whenever a land enters battlefield under control, you can play 2 green. If so, return this back to your hand. I like it. I think that's pretty good. And again, it's another X spell. We're going to need as many of them as we can get. All right, here's our big guy. Hierophant Biotitan. 10 double green. As additional cost to cast a spell, you can remove +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. It costs 2 less for each counter removed. That's crazy good, especially if we have a bunch of creatures out. Vigilance, Reach, Ward 2, can't be blocked by creatures parked 2 or less. I really like that, and we're going to be able to give it Trample for sure. Herald of the Secret Streams, maybe we cut, although it's probably the card that probably comes back in before anything else, because it's just going to give us that unblockability. But I think we got plenty of Trample sources, so I doubt we're going to have any issues with getting through to our opponents. Next up, we've got Haruspex. Haruspex. There we go. Whenever another creature dies, put a counter on it, remove X counters from it, add X men of any one color. Ooh, so it's kind of a dangerous. It's kind of a dangerous card. I like it because it taps for mana, but it only removes the counters from itself. Ooh, I'm back and forth on this one, so I think I'm gonna cut it for now. Garrison Starn Kellermorph. Ward 2. Whenever another source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent player, it deals 2 damage to that permanent player instead. I see what they're going for there with the tokens, but I don't plan on going that route. Genestealer Patriarch, I've seen. Love the look of this card. Whoever it attacks, put a counter on a defending player, in an infection counter, and then when a creature with an infection counter on it dies, you create a token that's copy that creature, except it's a Tyrannid. This is great. Not only does it allow us to steal our opponent's creatures, but it makes them Tyrannids as well. Genestealer Locust, whenever a creature attacks you, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. Whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, it gets +0/+1 until end of turn. I don't see as much of the benefit in that. Although I kind of want to bring Shared Animosity back in. If we're going to be having this much trample at our fingertips, I feel like we definitely want it. Gargoyle Flock. Flying at the beginning of your end step, if a creature enters the battlefield on your controller's turn, create a gargoyle token. Okay, I mean, we're already playing the doubling season, so that seems fair. Exocrine to X red. Ravenous, when it enters the battlefield, it does X damage to each player and each other creature. So we got to be a little bit careful with Exocrine, because that deals damage to ourself as well. But hey, if we do 7 into X and deal 7 damage to every creature and every player, that seems pretty good. So I kind of like it. Just got to be careful with our commander that doesn't get doubled. Death Leaper, Terror Weapon. Creatures you control that enter the battlefield this turn have double strike. That's huge. So that would happen every turn, which is great. The creatures that would come down, if we can give them haste with Invigorating Springs or something like that, they're going to have double strike, and with Trample, it's going to push through for a lot of damage. Clamavus. Each creature you control get +1/+1 for each +1/+1. Oh my gosh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And if we can double this thing somehow, this just makes me want to play Molten Echoes or an Reflection of the Littjara, but that's okay. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Make our creatures giant. Broodlord. When it enters the battlefield, distribute X +1/+1 counters among other target creatures you control. So it not only gets the counters on itself, but it spreads them around. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Biophagus. Add 1 mana of any color. If this mana is spent to cast a creature spell, that creature enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Okay, so it's a mana dork. I don't mind that. Adelan Jackal, Trample Haste. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can search your library for a basic land card and put it in the battlefield tapped. I don't think we need that as much. We're really not going to be hurting for that, I don't think. Acolyte Herald, whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. If an artifact was destroyed this way, its controller draw a card. I'm okay. I think we've got better creatures. And Aberrant. X1 green, trample whenever it becomes combat to a player, destroy a target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Man, the creatures in this deck are so good. Why are these so good? And we find ourselves down to 106. Man, these cuts are going to be tough. These cuts are going to be tough. I feel like we need to play into our ramp a little bit more because some of our creatures up on the tall end are just great. I mean, this is my first time reading through those creatures. That's kind of why I wanted to go through them. I'd looked at a lot of the green ones for, Goreclaw and things like that. Man, I love the creatures in this deck. I think all of them have good value. We have great trample enablers, so something like Trample the Hordes just seems really good. I kind of want to cut a Kadama's Reach, maybe. Maybe we have enough ramp already. I kind of like cutting the Blasphemous Act. I know what people are, they're going to say is, Millzy, you need a board wipe. And you're right, we have Curse of the Swine, but I really feel like we need to focus on just getting our creatures down and going hard. We really need to just go big and go tall. I think it makes more sense. I like Inspiring Call. but I kind of worry that I didn't realize it gave our creatures indestructible. That makes it even better. Okay, we're down to 104. 104, that's rough. There's a lot of really great cards in this deck, guys. I'm not entirely sure what to do. I think this is where testing comes into play. Because I'm going to cut 4 cards. But they're probably going to be 4 cards that I want. They're 4 cards that I really care about. I don't want to go any lower on the creatures because 28 seems like a good amount. We're going to see a lot of them. And with the amount of card draw we have, we should see even more of them. In fact, I'll probably leave a couple of creatures in the sideboard to see if they come back in. Is it Chromatic Lantern? Do we not need that artifact? Do we have plenty? That could be part of it. Let's try that. I think we have plenty of ramp and lands. I think the argument could be made for Pongify or Rapid Hybrid, but I really think we need the removal, especially really cheap removal. Down to 103. If we're going to have access to this much trample, Shared Animosity just makes too much sense. Something tells me that it's something like Elemental Bond or Garruk's or Temur Ascendancy. But I really love the haste. I really think the haste is going to be really important. I don't want to get rid of Invigorating Hot Springs because it just enables all of our creatures to have haste. I don't want to get rid of Simic Ascendancy because it's a win con. Maybe it's something like Sylvan Library. Maybe we can bring it back in if our draw isn't good enough. Maybe we try to go without it, and if we need more of that draw, we can bring it back in. Does Hardened Scales? No, Hardened Scales is too good, especially when you get it early. Is it Twinning Staff? No, I really like Twinning Staff because if our plan's to copy it with our commander, right? This is why we're choosing her over the Swarmlord, because we want to use that second ability to copy. I think we got to keep it. Man, I'm at 102 and I'm stuck. I am very stuck as far as what I want to cut. I think what I need to do is just cut 2 cards. We'll drop the sideboard down to about 10 like I normally do for the cards that I consider as I test the deck. And then I think we just got to ship it. I think what we're going to have to do is just make the call. And when we test, we can determine how much we have and what we need. So I think that's what we're going to have to do. We're just going to have to cut 2 cards, and then we're going to test, and then that'll determine whether or not our cuts were right or wrong. So I think for the first cut, I think I'm going to cut Elemental Bond. Temur Ascendancy does the same thing and gives all our creatures haste. So I feel like we're still getting that great ability. And I want to keep Hot Spring as well. I like Garruk's Uprising because it's going to give everything trample. So those are our kind of like enabling effects. I like Rhythm of the Wild just because our creatures can't get countered. I like the Flourishing. Man, do I take Shared Animosity back out? Or maybe it's Hadana's Climb. I like Hadana's Climb, but I really like the rest of the enchantments here. If I cut an artifact, it would be the Twinning Staff. Down to 101. You know, like we said, we just got to cut and we got to go with it. We got to cut a card, go with it, and fix it on the back end. So what I think I'm going to do... is... I think I'm going to cut the shared animosity. I think a lot of these other cards are just really important and give us other win cons, and that gets us down to 100. So what we're going to do now is go through our sideboard. We're going to try to cut it down to about 10, 10 or 15. I always like getting a little bit less than 10 if I can. And then what we can do is let that be the kind of cards that we're considering as we play test. And I think what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the cards that I don't think I'm going to end up putting back in. I don't want to cut as many of these Tyranids yet, just because I don't know how much I'll actually want to play, if they're actually going to be good or bad. And maybe it's something where as I play through the games, I realize that some of these Tyranids are actually pretty good or whatever. And so I don't want to necessarily cut them yet. Cut the Death's Presence. Cut the Elemental Bond. I think we can cut the palette. As much as I think we're playing with a lot of X spells. And I think the palette could be worth it. Bread for the Hunt. Bone Sabers. Blasphemous Act. I don't really like the Jackal. I'll cut that one. Aetherize. Don't really like that one. I don't really like Abundance. All right, so our sideboard's down to 11. I think I'm okay to keep it there. Again, it has a lot of these Tyranids that I'm just not terribly sure on. But guys, I think that's it, baby. We did it. We did it. We got down to 100. The Tyranid Swarm with Magus Lucea Kane. I'm going to put the deck list down in the comments so you guys can take a look at this one. I had a ton of fun. I think this is a deck that I can see myself playing. In fact, I'm committing to playing it. I'm going to try it for sure. I think I put enough of what I'd want out of this deck in, and then I think we're going to take really good advantage of this Tyranid kind of abilities that they have. All the creatures seem really cool. I'm leaving a lot of the creatures in here because maybe they get swapped one for one in for other ones. We really won't know that until we do some good testing, but I think after looking at it like this may be a deck I might pick up. I know the sealed decks are going to get kind of expensive, and if I want a lot of these cards, I think I'm going to have to do it sooner rather than later. A lot of the cards that I added in are cards that I already have or I have access to. So the way I look at it, I mean, if this is a deck that I want to keep around, maybe I'll take a good run at testing it for a week or two. And if this is something I really like, then maybe I go out and buy the precon, because a lot of the precon seems like it's going to be really useful. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this brewing format. This is something that I really enjoy doing on my own. And so I figure why not enjoy it together? Why not have some fun? So we come down here and we look at our deck stats. Mana curve, definitely very low on the curve, which is great because remember, there are a lot of X spells. We see mostly green, which is what I expected. We get to make a couple tokens there. I don't think that's all of them. I thought a couple of them made Tyranid tokens, so maybe this isn't showing us all of the tokens. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. But all right, man, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the deck. Like I said, the link will be in the description so you can see the deck, as well as every other deck that I've done for Millzy Brews. You'll see them all in the comments. What I'm committing to doing is leaving the decks as the way they are on my Architect account here. This is exactly how it is when I brewed it. And then I'll pull this deck over to my personal account over on Moxfield, and I'll probably play around with it a little bit as I test. But that is all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.